Welcome to Studio 5. We're in Greece on the set of the series The House of David and bringing you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at one of the most popular biblical stories ever told. At the moment, we're joining you from the throne room of King Saul. And from here in the throne room,
Philistines have assembled.
we're exploring this epic cinematic look at the shepherd boys rise from the fields to celebrate a king.
It is about the greatness of God.
It's an exclusive first look at Prime Video's new venture into biblical storytelling. In the pages of Scripture, we meet David as an overlooked teenager and follow his path to becoming the most famous king of Israel. It's a story very close to the heart of the young man who plays him in his very first on-screen role.
Can one stone change the course of history?
They're casting for this series. They have all these actors in place, but they still haven't identified their David. And they go through thousands of audition tapes and wait months and months and months. And finally we come to you.
Why?
David's heart is like a deep fire, set strong, unbroken. It is the very reason he was chosen.
How does that feel?
Scary. I mean, like, obviously, like, with an opportunity like this and to tell this type of story, it's so special and everyone wants it. But it's scary because there's so much pressure. You know, being the one person to do this. Like, I like to think that there's plenty of people who could have done it. I'm just the lucky one.
David, you are a poet, and you are a shepherd. You are not a man of glass.
At the time, you're on Broadway in a successful play, and you kind of have a desire to be David. Tell me, where'd that desire come from?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I think it goes back to the show The Chosen. Like, I watch The Chosen, and every single time I watch an episode, I cry. I see the Bible come to life. I see human beings in front of me. I don't see some big, grand person far away. And I've always been inspired by that, and I've wanted to be a part of it. And so I thought to myself, man, if they ever have an audition, you know, I'd love to maybe play King David in a flashback scene, maybe. Like young King David herding the sheep or whatever. And that was a long time ago. That was 2021. And so to get the opportunity now to do that, but on a full scale, and to dive deeply into the story of David, is such a full circle moment from that initial spark.
I know there's been fasting and praying. How did you prepare to do this day in and day out now for these months?
Through fasting and prayer.
Why do my brothers get to fight? And I'm stuck here.
There's a verse that I really love in Proverbs. It's trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your paths. The message is just to trust in the Lord and lean on him, and everything else will come. Even if it feels like you're in the middle of a storm, he will calm it.
I've heard you share that one of the emotional scenes, or most emotional scenes in the production for you so far, is that moment we see in Scripture where David is essentially auditioning for the king, and he's got to go in and sing and perform. What was that like? Why do you think that was so emotional?
It wasn't emotional in the sense that I was like crying or anything, but it was so relatable. We know what it's like to be rejected hundreds and hundreds of times, but to still keep going. And so in a sense, that's what this was. It was David auditioning in front of the director, and anything could happen. The king is not happy. There's a reason why these auditions are being held, and so there's a lot at stake. There's so much that can go wrong.
My king, I will fight the giant.
The way that it affected each person and the tears on their face, and to in a way almost see the Holy Spirit move in the room, just right here. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Goliath!
Can one act of defiance create the
We
legend?
talked about the battle scene, so your perspective in shooting that scene, because you know everyone is going to be looking to see the battle. What was that like?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot of stunts, a lot of running and ducking and covering and jumping and turning and slinging. And I have a shoulder injury because of the slinging. So I've been going this whole time with like a little torn tendon, I think. Yeah, but it's been quite a challenge. And then on top of that, to say one of the most popular speeches of all time, that speech to Goliath of "You come to me with sword and spear." I mean, and then realizing that it's not actually a speech, it's just a conversation had in a moment, said to a giant.
Indeed. What has David taught you playing him? What lesson have you?
Oh man, what hasn't he taught me? I think most of all, David has taught me courage and bravery. Because the one thing that David always does is he doesn't run from his fears, he goes right to them. And I think that's a lesson we all need, is to not run away from our fears, but to face our fears, to stand up against the giant and to say, I am here. Even though we might be scared, like, might be terrified, we still choose to stand against giants.
Why do we love David so much?
Because he's human. Because he makes mistakes. And yet still, God blessed him and made him king and made him rise against everybody else, the most unlikely candidate to be chosen. It's just it's a special thing when you see yourself, you see the story of yourself being told. I mean, I relate to him so much. I've always felt like the outcast. I've always felt like the most unlikely candidate. Yet, there's things that have happened in my life. There's giants that I have faced, that I have overcome. And I think that's why we love David. It's because we see a flawed man in front of us, yet still, it's because of his heart that we love him.
I was meant for more than this.
David, you have the heart of a lion.
Still to come,
It is the very reason he was chosen.
a sit-down with series creator John Irwin and director John Gunn.
Take me back to your most memorable moment of the story of David before coming to this project.
I think my early memories of it were really the simple version of this, like shepherd boy with a slingshot.
Welcome back to this Studio 5 House of David special. Filmmakers John Irwin and John Gunn are co-writers and co-directors on this series. They've worked on successful projects together and separately, and both agree that work prepared them for this.
I will tell you the story of David, a simple shepherd boy, an outcast who became one of the most famous kings who ever lived.
Here we are on the set of House of David. Where are we sitting first of all?
So this is Saul's throne room,
Okay.
in which David plays to comfort this tormented king with his music, and this is the palace, sort of home of the family of the House of Saul, the family of Saul, and we spend a lot of time here in the beautiful, beautiful sets that were constructed for this.
God does not see what man sees.
He sees into the heart. And you have the heart of a lion.
For both of you, take me back to your most memorable moment of the story of David before coming to this project.
I think my early memories of it were really the simple version of this, like shepherd boy with a slingshot. And it seemed so ridiculous that you could kill a giant with it. And now, as we've been digging into it and having the opportunity to represent in such a massive way that moment of David and Goliath that I remember in such a simple way as a kid. I think in many ways that story does send a lot of us back to our childhood understanding of this little guy against the big guy. Yeah. And so I love that we get to represent that in a way that I hope will be so much more surprising and emotionally compelling.
For me, the spark of curiosity and interest started when I was 16 years old. I went to Israel with my dad, and you just feel the electricity of history when you go to a place like Israel and a place like Greece. That you know, they say in America, it's 100 years is a long time. Over here, 100 miles is a long way. But you realize that there's thousands of years of history. You just felt that, specifically in the old city of Jerusalem. This person has transcended thousands of years, and why? And this incredible story lived. And that just began a quest of curiosity for me. I just love coming of age stories, hero's journey stories. That's a theme in our work. And this, I think, is the ultimate.
How do you balance telling the story that most of us think we know with biblical accuracy, but then telling a compelling story at the same time? How are you striking that balance?
We feel like a great responsibility for the source material, and you want to get it right, and you want to honor it. And the way to honor it is to understand the heart of it, and then to fill in those gaps in ways that supports the truth of the heart of that. And then you get a lot of help from people to go like, no, this is great, but this is actually inaccurate. And so, you know, we've taken great pains to be as accurate as we can be, and then to take liberties in the places where you feel like it's all right to take liberties.
And the Bible is kind of like, you know, flying through a theme park in a jet, you know? It's a historical overview at a high altitude. So it's wonderful to, first of all, love the material, and then really think about, okay, these are real people. And then you read all that David was going through in the Psalms, and then you cross-reference them to the life that he was living, you know? You read 1st and 2nd Samuel, and you know, it really comes to life.
At the heart of it, David's story is fill in the blank, and I like both of you. At the heart of it, David's story is?
It's a story of family, I think. I mean, it's a story of destiny, right? And the weight and the cost of destiny, but that cost often impacts the relationships closest to us. And so because this is the house of David, we're really telling a story of different households and different families that in a sort of collision course with each other in a way that is what I think makes it a very emotionally compelling and resonant and relatable story.
I feel I love hero's journey stories. I love stories of destiny. And you wonder, why do we all love Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, you know, stories of someone chosen for some great thing and walking the rite of passage, coming of age, hero's journey. And I think it's because we all feel, you know, in our soul that we have potential and that we have a destiny to fulfill in some grand design and some role to play. And I think that's written on our souls, and I think that's why we're drawn to these stories. So at the end of the day, I really do feel like David is a hero's journey, because we all want to live our own hero's journey. And I think David is one of those great stories that show that just say yes to what God's asking you to do, even if it's crazy, even if no one around you understands. Because that's the only commonality I can find in these biblical epic stories, is these are all incredibly flawed characters, but they're the ones that said yes.
Are you afraid?
Terrified.
I believe in you.
When we return,
how does Mortal Kombat prepare you to play Goliath?
Patience. I mean, it's quite funny you should say that, because the characters are kind of very similar.
bodybuilder, actor, and action star Martin Ford peels back the layers of the most famous giant, Goliath. Perhaps David's most famous story is his battle against Goliath. Let's meet the man who's putting a human face on this giant role.
Send me your champion!
Goliath!
How does Mortal Kombat prepare you to play Goliath?
Patience. I mean, it's quite funny you should say that, because the characters are kind of very similar. With Shao Kahn and Goliath, in a sense of they are the ultimate bad guy, larger than life, and a power that's unrecognizable by humans. So I mean, There is some alliance there for sure. I mean, the computer game and the Bible are probably very different, however.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So I think, and I'm guilty, that when I think of Goliath in biblical terms, I don't even think of Goliath as a human per se, because we're thinking giant, massive. So what's the difference in what people are thinking versus what we're going to see?
Well, I think the power of allowing us to tell the story with a backstory allows you to see him more as what you've just suggested that you don't, as human. And if we can have that relatability to the fact that he is half human, he does have a family, he has brothers and a mother, and there's a driving force, there's a motivation for his actions, and then maybe there would be a place within yourself that could sympathize with where he's been positioned, how he got positioned there, and actually go, is there a way that you can sympathize and give some empathy to the character? That's my goal. It's not to say that he was innocent, it's not to say that he was good, it was to say that there's understanding.
How has this changed your perception of Goliath that you knew from the Bible and your perception of the David that we know?
With Goliath, it made me realize that you shouldn't judge people before you get all your facts. And then the judgment could be very different. With David, it was more so how brave he must have been and how much belief he would have had.
Stand your champion!
Goliath!
And to think, well, would I have done that? Would I have believed so much in myself that I would have took on someone that was 4 times the size of me? Probably not.
I don't even need you to be that much bigger.
Yeah, just a bit bigger.
Now, the scene that everyone is looking forward to is the battle scene between the two. What insight can you give us? What's it like to get...
some really, really deep insight to this.
Okay.
I lost my voice after about half a day.
Oh, wow!
It was do you know what? We literally just finished shooting that this week.
Wow.
And it has been the most phenomenal experience with the scene, with the geography of where we've filmed, and then the power of the actual face-off between David and Goliath, and realizing just how much of a big deal this was, and how not one of the other members would have stepped forward, had the thousands of people that turned up for the battle, and that, I'm hoping, is one of the scenes of the show.
What are you hoping that when this series does roll out? I imagine you put a lot of work, intention, study, preparation. So when people are sitting at home watching, what are you hoping?
I'm hoping that the story plays out true to the traditionalists. I think that's really important for us. I'd like them to still believe that the story they know is the truth, but it allows them to see it from a different set of eyes. And I think that's really important in the world, especially at the moment with all the conflict that's going on. And it's such divide that we lose humanity. And it's, you're on this side or you're on that side. Well, there's innocent people on this side, there's innocent people on that side. And it's the crossfire of the innocence that's it's where the sadness is. And I think if this story can make people relate to today and go, do you know what? I may have judged that side too quick. I'm not saying which one. Everyone has different opinions. Everyone comes from different places. And that's what I'd love people to take away from it. Yeah. So try and see people with an open mind rather than a closed judgment.
Our House of David special continues next.
I will fight the giant.
Fight him with the same spirit you bring into this room.
With the actors who play King Saul and his queen.
So if Saul is Israel's first king, you're playing the first queen.
Queen right here.
For David to rise, Saul must fall. Let's meet King Saul and his queen.
Fight him with the same spirit you bring into this room?
So if Saul is Israel's first king, you're playing the first queen.
First queen right here.
I think there's only one mention of her in the Bible, very brief.
Yeah, she has, I think, 2 mentions. One, the way she approached him and chose him to be her husband. And then second time, where Saul is really upset with one of his sons, and he sort of blamed her.
With such brief mention.
Yeah.
Who is she? How would you describe her?
I find her to be a little bit tough, especially with her kids, her children. I think she makes decisions that are sometimes are hard for me to understand, and I have to go back to the writers and say, why? I don't get it. But I do get it. I do get her sense of wanting to control the environment and make sure that everybody survives and the kingdom survives and the king survives.
So we are looking at a biblical story more than 2,000 years old. How is it relevant today?
We don't change. That's why. It is relevant because we don't change. Human beings, I feel, don't change much. I mean, circumstances changes and the surrounding change and culture change, but changes. But we, as human beings, are going through the same hardships and lessons and relationships, and it's just the power dynamics keeps changing all the time. But we're kind of the same. So this definitely relates to us.
I want a place with the king's warriors.
David, you are a poet.
What's your connection to Saul before coming to this role?
Nothing. No, serious. I have no connection to Saul at all before that. But when I read it, I felt the connection. The whole story of Saul, when he started like from nothing and he become something, and all of a sudden he loses everything. So all this upside and down, it grabs me and challenges me.
This project feels special. Is it special to you?
It is special.
And that is going to do it for this extra special edition of Studio 5, coming to you from Greece and the set of The House of David. Until next time, make time to uplift someone else and then come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week.